Hey everybody, Neon here, doing another gameplay video. This time it is Dane versus Lifecoach from that series, of course, that I think that everybody knows about, one of the best series from the weekend. I wanted to do one of the games for even though they're very complicated, there's a lot to say about them, and I just wanted to do one of these games because I thought that it was really interesting, and there's some things about this game that I thought maybe other people hadn't been touching on that I thought was really interesting, especially related to late game decision making. With that, though, I actually want to let you know about some of the things about how things are going to work. That way we're getting into the post-NDA experience time, and I am going to be setting up a page on my website very soon that'll allow you to submit clips. I'm going to probably post a video tomorrow, as I'm probably the day of that you're probably watching this, that will explain kind of how that's done, so keep your eyes open for that. But with that, let's get right into this video. If you're new here, though, just so that you know, we go through the video, we cast it all together, and then afterwards we do some analysis. If you don't want to watch the video with me just casting it, then you can skip forward to the analysis, and there's a time code up on the screen right now. So let's get into it. Okay, let's get started on this one, because this is a long one. Lane 1. We have Bristleback matched up against Treant Protector. This is a rough matchup for the Treant Protector, as you might imagine. We do have the option to play out either the Hellbear, Crippler, or the Mercenary Exiles, as we'll decide to opt for the Crippler. It does deal more damage, and the Exiles actually has an opportunity to be placed in one of the other lanes better, so it's actually good to check that whenever you're deploying cards, and the lanes have decided, like, well, is there an opportunity to place one of them in a better way? Once again, this is a bad matchup for the tree. In this case, it's on Lifecoach's side that he is going to be taking this rough trade. Now, he doesn't die here at the very least yet, but it's still not a trade that a matchup that you're interested in of Treant versus the Axe. So that Axe is going to take a big wet hit out of that tree, move on to that third lane. Now, this is what I was talking about in terms of that matchup and positioning advantage for the Mercenary Exiles. It can be placed in front of that creep there, and that ends up being a favorable interaction given the fact that the Mercenary Exiles has 1 armor and the creep does not. We also see the Beastmaster taking a little bit of damage off of the Sven as well. So far, so good from the side of Lifecoach. No hero kills yet, though, which, I mean, you don't really expect that in this kind of a matchup, especially given the fact that Sniper is the flop hero, as he usually is, but still, it is nice to get started with a dose of gold. But the Farvon now is going to be deployed into that center lane, and we see the Chen come out on the side of Dane, and he is going to be deployed into the leftmost lane, actually. Eventually, we're gonna get to that. But there's a question also of, like, where you're supposed to place them in these situations. It might seem a little bit strange to deploy a green hero into a lane that already has a green hero, and part of the rationale, I think, for it is why you see this on both sides is the fact that you have a lot of there's a high chance that both of these green heroes die. So being able to play out something that will be able to continue casting spells in the lane, especially given the fact that, like, for instance, the Chen here is in a pretty good position to kill some creeps, which works out well. Now, this ends up being a cute little play that we see from the side of Dane. He first plays out the Druid. On the side of Lifecoach, he plays out a Legionnaire, and then we juke to flip the positioning of the Druid and the Treant Protector. The purpose of this is to avoid Bristleback's passive ability, or reactive ability, I believe it is, technically, of giving him the +2 armor, which is useful to do in a course of a game like this. Like, if you're hoping for the game to go along, but you'll see that this ends up being somewhat important over the course of the game. And but now we move on to the second lane. We have the Axe looking to take that second hit on that Treant Protector, killing that. So this matchup is not going well for Lifecoach. Not too badly, still. Like, he's still able to fight for that lane. Nothing's gone too crazy. Now, this is a matchup that is a little bit less exciting. We have the Beastmaster looking to kill that Mercenary Exiles. That is avoided, though, by playing out the Instigator. Now, it would have been possible, I think, to add some to gold, to pay with some gold in order to keep him alive, but instead opts to keep it for purchasing these little trinkets and potions in the shopping phase. Dane also has, of course, some gold for purchasing some knickknacks and accessories. Tidehunter is going to be placed on the side of Lifecoach, and then Sniper is being placed on the side of Dane. Now, I think the Tidehunter is a pretty obvious positioning of going into that central lane, given the fact that he's best in a lane in which that there are more creeps on the opponent's side, and technically this is the one that has the most creeps in the opponent's side. And when you have units like also that blocker, the 06 that you see there, the Vanguard, Prowler Vanguard, that encourages lanes to slow down. So that's exactly where you want Tidehunter to be. Slow things down and then push the other lanes. Consume your opponent's resources. Sniper, a little bit more difficult. If you put him into the leftmost lane, he has a chance of being eaten by that Sven, which is a big problem. And on the rightmost lane, he's less effective there because he is best at doing his cross lane, assassinates over the course of the game. He ends up being placed in the first lane. Dane doesn't get unlucky and is not placed in front of that bristleback. That was a bit of a risky move, though. It should be emphasized that that was definitely a rough one. Now, Cheating Death, though, is drawn on the side of Lifecoach. This is a very powerful improvement card that is allows you to keep your units alive 50% of the time when they would die, but you have to have a green hero in the lane, so you definitely have to keep the lane active. You have to support it. There is a raise in the opponent's deck to counter this if that's where things go. We get a hip fire out of Dane on the first lane, but yeah, that Cheating Death could potentially be an important element of the game. But yeah, so hip fire takes down the Broad Legionnaire. Hipfire is quite a good card. Sniper has impressed me a good deal as well, with his headshot. In addition, just able to take down all sorts of creeps and control the board. Combat Training coming out. This is a really low impact card. I saw it over the course of the day. I think that we actually see a couple of copies of this in Lifecoach's deck. It is really not a stellar card, let me tell you. I do like it being played here in this particular instance, though, to push damage on that tower. Like, I mean, what else is it going to do? And you kind of really want to choose two towers, push them down, and especially since if the game goes long, you're actually at a big disadvantage. Your opponent has a lot of tools that are particularly powerful in the late game, so I can appreciate that. Lifecoach now has the opportunity to either play out a Prowler Vanguard or play out the Cheating Death. I personally really like playing out the Cheating Death in this situation. It just uses your mana more efficiently. I'm not sure why he plays the Vanguard. Find it hard to believe that he cares that much about that 1 health on the other Prowler Vanguard. Maybe, I don't know. I think this is just an inefficient use of his mana here. So it definitely wants to keep things out of the range of the Berserker's Call will be coming next turn, though, if that's where things land. No gold for purchasing anything in the shop on the side of Lifecoach, so we're just going to move on to hero deployment. I think the Treant pretty... it could be placed in both the first or the third lane. I think that he's kind of forced to be placed in the first lane in order to deploy the Cheating Death into the second lane and set that up. In some respects, this is then a cost that came as a result of not playing out that Cheating Death in the previous round and playing the Prowler Vanguard instead. So that is a sort of a low-key rationale as to why things were like, if you weren't paying attention, you might not see this, but I think that the Treant Protector is better positioned in that rightmost lane, fighting up against that Beastmaster, hopefully, and set some because that lane seems quite winnable. Draw some cards. We are forced to play out that Cheating Death into that second lane in order to help negate what the things will be happening with the axe. But that then also means that in this lane right now, we aren't going to be able to play out that Ogre Conscript. So that's going to be, once again, all of these cascading effects of not playing out that Cheating Death when we had the chance. Because now, for instance, if we go into the second lane afterwards, we have 6 mana and we could play out a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I know I'm going a little bit too hard on this, but we get the headshot killing the little creep there at the end. Cheating Death dropped down. Sniper's been lucky, hasn't been taking too much aggro and staying alive really well. We are deploying the Roseleaf Druid in front of that Bristleback. If you watched my video yesterday, you might remember me talking about this idea of role assessment and about trying to play for damage versus playing for value in various ways. And I think that Dane really appreciates the position of the matchup, where especially Bristleback is this war machine and can really push down towers very effectively as being a 10-11 right now. So just feeding him in this way is often really good and keeps his tower alive at 3 health. So while that might not feel good as a play, it's good. Now, it's still, like, I mean, 3 health isn't a lot. so don't get ahead of us ourselves. But okay, so Cheating Death is active now. The Axe does have access to the Berserker's Call, which can deal a bunch of damage to all of these units without him taking any damage himself, which is pretty rough and unappealing for the side of Lifecoach, but it is still interesting to do. Now, I mean, I guess also I've been harping on this idea of the Cheating Death decision that happened earlier, but we do have the opportunity now to deploy the Ogre into this lane if we really wanted to. I think that he doesn't end up doing it because of the purposes of playing it into the rightmost lane that has some attractive properties to it. But yeah, we get the Bronze Legionnaire out here to set up a hit on that creep. That's good. We can now, on Dane's side, play out the Berserker's Call. Deal a bunch of damage to set up the next Berserker's Call. just draws all of them and has to play them all out. So, rough life for him, being Berserker's Call flooded. Yeah, so that's a pretty strong play. There's a question of whether or not you're going to play out the Healing Salve in this position on the Tidehunter if you wanted to really ensure that he survives under all conditions. But I wouldn't, for instance, protect him from something like an Assassinate that would be happening from a different lane. If that comes out, I guess the Cheating Death has the potential to save him as well. But yeah, that Ravage has the potential to really turn around this lane depending on what we see from Dane's side. Yeah, so we heal him up, keep him alive against that Axe. Very nice. Moving on to the third lane. We can play out that Ogre Conscript in front of the Beastmaster, which pulls the aggro from Sven and sets up a kill on the Beastmaster. But we do activate this first. The Mercenary Exiles, rather. So that is a fine play. But yeah, the Ogre Conscript comes out, threatens the Beastmaster, but we do have a Fountain Flask on the side of Dane to counter that. Still, he's going to be taking a good deal of damage. But next turn, we have the Primal Roar from the side of Dane, so that will help to take control of that lane if that's where things land. So no gold to spend from the side of Lifecoach, just passes along. No heroes to deploy either, so that's all automatic. The 4-turn cooldown spells are now active. This is the 7-mana turn, or the round 5, depending on how you count. So we do have the option to activate the Holy Persuasion and steal something. Lifecoach wisely just passing, forcing his opponent to do something. What does he have access to? He does have access to cards such as the Assassinate, which can help to clear out one of these threats, such as the Bristleback that is there. I believe that he's on single-digit health still, so he could definitely be taken down by that, and that's pretty appealing and will reverse a lot of the damage. The Ogre Corpse Tosser is actually kind of interesting from the side of Lifecoach because it could help to close things out if that's where things go. Yeah, so we get a steal here, but obviously yeah, the Corpse Tosser, you would only put that out afterwards. So decides to place that out, assassinate on the Bristleback. Now that Ogre Corpse Tosser is turned off, not being able to deploy that right there. I personally, after the Holy Persuasion comes out, I think that I play the Corpse Tosser under that position because it just gets that last little bit of damage in, and that's so useful. We have that Ravage, doesn't hit any creeps, but that doesn't matter. It does slow things down. Now, given how much armor stuff has, though, this is still rough. We're not making that much progress in this lane. This is really just buying time. I mean, that's fine as an application for Tidehunter. I just kind of would rather not have Farvon in this lane. Now, you can't really do anything about that. You don't get to have choices of it, but just the plays out a couple of cards here, kind of in this initiative dump phase. Yeah, I think that's a good term for it. I think I was mentioning this the other day that I wanted a term for this as being an initiative dump. So this is an initiative dump phase of just spending cards that do stuff because you have already given up the initiative anyway. Now we get the Primal Roar on the side of Dane, pushing out all of that good stuff into the other lanes, and that will really reverse the path of what's happening in that third lane and get some damage in on that Ogre Conscript. Get a nice little sword for Lifecoach. That might help to increase the pressure, which he's been having trouble ending out the game. A lot of options still in Dane's hand, by the way. So things are looking rough. Soul of Spring, I'm actually interested in playing this on the Sven, since he is the weaker of the two heroes here, if we're going to be playing it on somebody, in terms of health. Now, this is usually the kind of card that you think of and say, oh, this can go on not only on green heroes, but that can actually go on anything. So, interesting little point there. Does put it on the Treant Protector. I feel like this is kind of redundant, too, because he also has the effect of giving the armor as well. I kind of would rather spread that out a little bit. We also have the potential from the side of Dane that he could just assassinate the Treant Protector in response to this, if he really wanted to shut that down. But yeah, this Lifecoach, man, just his hands have been horrible. I mean, I think that there's part of this is that his deck is just worse and less impactful. We have these things like Corpse Tossers and defensive defensive blooms, like nothing that's particularly exciting. We do get the Hand of God out, though, to kind of just buy some time. I think that Hand of God is just a really interesting card, and we'll see this over the course of the game, of how it's used, where it stalls out the game and allows you to sort of slowly build up resources in a given lane because you get some extra creeps, you deal damage with it, and just kind of buys time again and again and again, and hopefully over that time you can generate some sort of advantage. We do get the Corpse Tosser out into that center lane. It's hard for me to tell exactly how much he's going to accomplish here over the course of the game, but yeah, we get the Berserker's Call, kills some stuff, that Tidehunter stays alive because of that cheating death, which is quite handy for him, and that Axe also is kicked out of the lane as well, which is, in some respects, an advantage, because it does mean that he gets to redeploy him, and that the tower isn't being pushed too quickly, but that kind of is beginning to change. It's possible to deploy this Vulmartyr in front of the Tidehunter to try to trade with it, but there's a question about whether or not it's worth the initiative there. It seems as if he values the initiative more. I'm not sure exactly why. Actually, I think that the rationale here is that they're planning to just allow this lane to trade like this, so that's still neutral going slowly, and then maybe set up a kill with the sniper in the first lane with Assassinate, which she has multiple copies of in hand. So just having initiative in that first lane, which is clearly wwhere a lot of the action is taking place, is pretty attractive. Bristleback coming back in, though, this guy has been, in some ways, a really important part of this game because it seems like Dane has been investing a lot of resources to keep him off the battlefield. And because he's such an efficient tower pusher relative to everything else in Lifecoach's deck. Decides to go into that left lane. It's just been quite the party there. Basically all game long. And both players just totally abandoning that third lane is kind of weird. It's strange that you see that in a game like this, where both players have kind of conceded a lane, and people could, for instance, if that Bristleback went in there, he could take over it pretty easily. But then you're not threatening the tower in this way. So we do have a setup here for potential lethal, but there's a lot that can be done on both sides. Sniper starts things off by shooting Sven in the face. We have a response here from Lifecoach of what he could do. He could deploy Defensive Bloom, very exciting, or he could do something such as like Intimidation in order to push the sniper out of the lane and attempt to push the tower. Now, obviously, this is punished by any large creep. And decides to pass. On the side of Dane, now we get a golden ticket. Activate that. That's a nice card to spend and to use when you're kind of just killing time and want to see if you trigger your opponent into doing anything. Like maybe your opponent panics and he's like, oh, maybe they get some sweet item, so I will activate stuff. But I think that also this might be a situation in which it'd be worth looking at the deck list and seeing what can be played in order to stop the aggression from happening here, so we do eventually get out a blocker on the side of Dane to absorb that damage from Bristleback, which is quite an attractive play. And that this also then means that, for instance, the Intimidation, it's not going to be able to just set up a kill as easily as before. So if we play the Intimidation, yes, so we play the Intimidation in this instance, get some extra damage into the lane, and then the Roseleaf Rejuvenator can come down and restore some of that life and kill one of the creeps. So that's a very tight play, and it's very good for Dane to kind of draw Lifecoach into that line of play and force him to use that Intimidation in that instance. I'm interested what he would have done had Lifecoach just passed on those situations. That's an interesting thought. But yeah, the Vul Martyr doing a ton of work here, just saving the tower. Defensive Bloom comes out on the side of Lifecoach. This card is so bad. Man, I'm not gonna lie. If you don't have Mr. Avernus in your deck, you really don't want to be playing this. Okay, damage comes in. Tower stays alive just barely. Move to that center lane. We deploy the Elite, which will grow over the course of the game as it kills creeps. Unfortunately, that creep does not quite die just yet. Now, that Sniper, though, he has the capacity to shoot down that Bristleback from across the battlefield here. Very appealing. I like that, and I think that it was actually a misplay for Lifecoach to not play the cloak on the Bristleback in that position, because it is the most important hero that he has access to, and trying to keep him out of the range of Assassinate is actually quite important. So he could have done that in the earlier, like after the Intimidation, for example. So Intimidation, the opponent plays out the Roseleaf Rejuvenator, and then you play the cloak. Keep him alive, and the Assassinate probably would have hit something, but not the Bristleback, and that makes a big difference. Two heroes coming out from the side of Dane, and one hero from the side of Lifecoach. The question is where they're going to go. The Axe going into that first lane is quite good, given how powerful he is in his team fight capacity. Can't decide what to do with that far punt. It's hard. It's hard. This one is difficult about whether or not you're going to try to push that central lane hard or keep things together in that first lane. And when you don't have access to any of your red heroes, that's problematic. And no cards in hand too. Man, this is a rough game for Lifecoach and how things have turned out. Those are not the cards that you want, given the fact that you have no red heroes in play right now. So that's rough. Some brickety bricks. Dane, on the other hand, actually does have choices and game actions that he can take that are meaningful. He has the opportunity to do, we deploy the Primal Roar right there, pushing out all of the green heroes from that lane, taking control of it and his opponent just does not have any tools for battling past it, getting those Jasper Knives for reasons that matter a ton. But at the very least here, we have the opportunity to push down this center tower. God Strength dealing a bunch of extra damage if you actually kept it in the lane, but he decides to just teleport out both his Treon Protector and the Tide Hunter, as you might expect. This is a great way to redeploy things into the first lane, since this second lane is so under control. Once again, also you're in this initiative dump sort of phase, so I kind of like this as a tactic, and it's hard to really be punished from this position depending on what is in your opponent's deck. I'll double check later on to see if there was anything that he could have played here, but I really don't think there is after the first Roseleaf Rejuvenator is out. Taking down the Treants 2 is quite attractive. Last 2 damage being dealt by the Ogre Corpse Tosser. Moving on to the right lane. Farvon trying to hold things down. Pressuring that sniper. You can also equip him up with that sword if you're feeling fancy. We get a Piggy Bear coming out. Yeah, so the sword comes out, trying to set up a kill on the sniper is successful for this, and there really wasn't anything for the opponent to do in that position, so it seems fine. Plus, that isn't the best position for the sniper, all things considered. 15 gold for Lifecoach. Decides to opt for buying up a few different items. Doesn't have access to that Shilda Aquila yet. But now this is an important decision point, and we'll definitely talk about this in the breakdown afterwards, about where to put all of your heroes, because you have the opportunity to dogpile any one of the 3 lanes and hopefully try to push it down. Opts for the first lane for this, and that ends up being a little bit of a problem, as we'll see here. But we do have just an absolute fiesta going down in this lane with 6 heroes, a full 6 heroes in this lane right now. And we have the Ravage. In addition, we just don't have initiative on Lifecoach's side. So that means that the opponent has the opportunity to play something out like the Divine Intervention or the Hand of God that is in hand, and that will really counter all of this action that comes out from the Leviathan. Is he Leviathan? Looks kind of like a Leviathan. Something like that, you know. Some fishy dude. But considering the plays right now for Dane, decides what is the best way to counter that Ravage that is on the table, decides for the Divine Intervention. There's part of me that wonders whether it was correct to just play out the Hand of God in terms of a mana maximization perspective. So it's possible, for instance, to set up a double play next turn. Now there's a question of whether or not you even Ravage here, since this is a much less attractive now. And he opts not to, which I think is an interesting logic. We also have a couple more cards in hand that we can play from the side of Dane. We can launch that Stonehall Elite, I think I can see. So yeah, Ogre Conscript is coming out here and threatening that wall. The walls do absorb a lot of damage, I will admit. I'm not crazy about them because they don't do very much. And there's a problem with Lifecoach's deck of not doing much. But he at the very least, it slows things down. So we do get a little bit of a trade there. Get some damage in. That center Ancient does get pressured a good deal. Third lane, still a little bit of a stalemate, not quite able to push things out just yet on either side. Dane, it seems, is pulling into the lead there, though, for the third lane. If we could just see it. Yeah, we can see that right now. So the Stonehall lead does come out here, though. Yeah, so this is definitely starting to get out of control for him, for Lifecoach in that third lane as well. Town Portal Scroll. That seems like it could be useful in this situation, depending on how much longer the game goes for. But it does feel as if it's moving to a close right now, and just buying up items that do things is pretty attractive. Where to put that sniper right now? Opts for that third lane, which is very interesting. It's going to be probably going in front of that Farvon, means that he has a very good chance of feeding once again. So this is a really interesting choice. They're very consciously saying, yeah, he's going to feed in that position. I kind of would have preferred him into that first lane, though there is a bit of a concern of being able to even use your mana at all. We do get the Ravage out, though, in this position. The Treant, since he came into that position, does... He doesn't get hit by the Ravage. We do have the opportunity to play out Hand of God in the situation. So this will help to stabilize the lane and stop the opponent from taking down their entire team. So very, very well played Hand of God in that situation. But you see what I mean here about like chaining these together, where you just acquire a little bit more material in the lane, a little bit more material in the lane, and eventually they become really backbreaking if you can string them together here and not lose the lane. But that's an important element of it too. Like if you are just way behind in a lane, it doesn't help you at all, which is really what you want from a 7-mana card. So something like Primal Roar does that. But there's not much in the hand of Lifecoach that really helps to solve these problems, especially since everybody has this just ton of health and have been stayed alive for so long. These centaurs come in this position. I'm not sure why he decided to play them here as opposed to in some of the other lanes. This is obviously a cross lane spell. It's not at its best here, given the fact that there's also a Chen in the lane. It's not active right now, of course, but it's not doing much. I guess that it does minimize the damage that you're taking, but is that really, like, you're actually just, I think, minimizing just a couple of damage here. No, you're in, yeah, like 2 damage rather is what it really does. We do get initiative at the end of all of this, which, I mean, sure, but it just feels like he would have been so much better in the third lane, for example, or even the second lane if you wanted to try and push the Ancient. Town Portal Scroll out. The Farvon try to double down on pushing the other lanes with the extra resources, just totally abandoning that third lane, which makes a good deal of sense from this position. And even when he has this kill on the sniper, just decides I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to bother. I would rather force my opponent to do other things. Once again, assassinating that Bristleback again and again and again. Just can't stop killing Bristleback is what Dane's plan has been kind of all this game, and it seems to be working out pretty well for him. Gank also coming in here, taking out the Centaur, which has really dulled the board state of Lifecoach in that first lane. No gold to spend. Farvon is coming in, immediately placed into that first lane, just knows that that's where everything is happening, has to defend his position there as best possible, see if he can push down find a hole to push down the tower here, or maybe buy enough time for that second lane's Ancient to fall. Hand not looking great. I know I keep on saying this for Lifecoach, but his hands have been so crappy. On the side of Dane, though, he's got tons of material. He can land the Hand of God. Yep, that's coming out once again, really slowing down any progress. And he's not dealing any damage quite yet, but yeah, Holy Persuasion, stealing that 4-8. Pretty bad news for him, for Lifecoach rather. Lifecoach opts to play out the Druid, Bellow pushing out the other Roseleaf Druid to help some damage to get through. You'll see this a lot where there's just this interest in pushing damage, especially in the late game, where you notice a a hole, you notice a weakness here, and you just double down and push, push, and push. So we get a big hit in this position. It goes down to 6 health, which is not a lot. Lifecoach passes priority here, just tries to do a little bit of damage. Back to the third lane, no choices really made here. Yeah, okay, we get the blink dagger. Of course, this one allows him to move into that first lane, which pretty much ensures victory. There's just no way for enough materials to be deployed into that first lane to keep things safe. So pushing that ancient a little bit here as well, but not particularly efficiently. Oh, right, yes, of course, gank too. Killing that Tide Hunter, just opening up another slot there to dull the defense of Lifecoach. Man, that sniper did so much goddamn work this game. Just one black hero, but he really pulled off some miracles. Like all his assassinates. Yeah, assassinated Bristleback, I think a full 3 times, and then ganked across lanes like this a couple times too. So just a hero. So, draw some cards. Divine Intervention doesn't help. Kraken Shell doesn't help. Our entire hand is garbage. That doesn't help either. And as a result, we get a concession out of Lifecoach. So that is the game, well fought by both players. So with that, it was definitely a little bit of a longer game, but I want to spend a few moments discussing a couple of key, interesting strategic moments, especially as we're moving into the late game. So as is often the case, as these draft games, part of it has to do with just a deck composition problem or issue. For Lifecoach's deck, there's really kind of a top-end problem or like an impact problem. There's just a number of cards that are really low impact that are in the deck. I mean, of course, you're forced to play the Prowler Vanguards, which are acceptable, not exactly exciting, but I mean they're not trash. But you also have, beyond that, you have 3 copies of the combat training. You get races in there, which I mean I understand that there's sometimes that it's good. This is not the matchup for it, of course. Defensive Bloom is another card in here, and all of that just meant that the deck felt extremely clunky, slow, and low impact. And especially what I want to emphasize here is just how weak his top end was in this deck. Like, there's Ogre Conscript, Spring the Trap, Cheating Death, and after that, like Intimidation, I guess, the Ogre Corpse Tosser. Like, there really isn't very much in the way of win conditions in this deck, which is something that I think that you often really need. I mean, like, Spring the Trap is win condition, don't get me wrong. Like, that is a card that is a win condition in a deck like this, but when you run up against a deck like your opponents, they can go toe-to-toe with you in taking out a Spring the Trap. Like, they can trade with it, they can steal copies of it, and what that means also is that I think that you have to use it more strategically, and you have to get as much mileage out of it as humanly possible. So that relates to one of these things that we talk about soon. The other thing that I want to highlight is that, so given this context of what the deck looks like, this, I think, emphasizes the importance of why Bristleback mattered so much over the course of this game, and why I was kept on bringing up the fact that it's like, okay, you assassinate your Bristleback again, assassinate Bristleback again. This has happened again and again and again over the course of the game, and that's because Dane felt that keeping him off the battlefield was the best way to really dull his opponent's effects, because it was the only thing that he really had going on that Lifecoach had access to that could really push tower damage effectively. So if you just you look at the deck like this, you can see that this it makes sense to say, like, okay, Bristleback and Spring the Trap. If I can beat Spring the Trap and I can beat the Ogre Conscript, then Bristleback is the only way that I really lose this game. Or if I get bogged down in a battle over a cheating death lane. So you can just overpower them. So in that sense, this is it goes back to this idea of beatdown versus control matchups, and in this situation, the deck that has the inevitability is certainly Dane. So how this then relates to this situation here, going into the late game and moving in on the leftmost lane here, and I'll describe my decision making of what's going on here. We see that Lifecoach has 4 heroes coming in at once. It means that you have the ability to split them up, dogpile one lane, figure out a bunch of different possibilities here, but clearly that first lane is where a lot of the action is happening, but there is potential for setting up a kill on that second tower, as it really doesn't require that much time with all of your heroes basically in the lane to take down an Ancient. So, and your tower in the first lane too is doing like pretty reasonably. Like it's not in any super trouble of dying in the immediate future. So keeping that alive and slowing the game down might all that is necessary to win. So what I actually like as a split here, I believe, is putting the Tidehunter in the left lane and setting up a major Ravage. And because that's all that he really needs to do there to buy enough time for that second lane to push down the Ancient. And a lot of this has to do with the specific composition of Dane's deck. He has God's Hand, Hand of God rather, he has Divine Intervention, he has Primal Roar, Berserker's Call. Like, he has just oodles and oodles of not just late game, but specifically team fight late game. So in that situation, like clearly, Ravage is like the best team fight ability in the game. It doesn't cost a card, and it's renewable, and it stuns stuff, and stunning is really, really powerful. So there, you do have that. But beyond that, your opponent has tons of tools for doing this, and your only other tool for really engaging in team fights is the Cheating Death that has already been deployed in a different lane. So going toe-to-toe in an honest battle over what's going on in a given lane, like trying to fight for value there, I think that most of the time this probably works for a player of like your relatively high skill and such, of just being able to use your resources effectively. In this matchup though, you just can't do that. You can't play fair like this. You can't go head-to-head like this. You have to try to tempo them out of the game here, where you juke them by playing the Tidehunter, ravaging, slowing things down, getting lucky, maybe, and getting a good ravage, and then go all in on that second lane and push down the tower, or all in on the third lane and push down the tower. The tower is the Ancient in the second lane. So I think that these are all different possibilities of what could have been done in this situation, and that by going into that first lane, there was just so hard of a commitment that ravage had to be incredible in order to stop your opponent from playing out all of these powerful spells and chaining together these Hands of God and Divine Interventions. And specifically, there's a good reason to believe that your opponent's hand is filled with these Divine Interventions and team fight related abilities, because he hasn't been deploying them over the course of the game. Your opponent's hand is filled with friggin' cards, and they've obviously been sitting on something. Like, it's not just, I don't like pogs that they have in their hand. Like, there's gotta be doing something, and it's playing a deck that's filled with great team fight cards. So you have every reason to believe that unless, if your Ravage isn't godlike, you're just going to get chewed up in this lane, grinded up in a team fight, which you can't handle, especially just given how low impact your card is. And this then finally relates to this decision about the Spring the Trap moment, which was a really interesting play. And I think that maybe this was just out of desperation or feeling like the game was already slipping out of your control. It's hard for me to know, but I just can't really think of a reason of why it was best suited in that lane other than to just absorb a couple of points of damage, when you could very easily deploy into one of the other lanes and help to set up some pressure in these other lanes. Because ultimately what you're saying when you make this kind of a play is saying, I am going to take the first lane, I am going to push into the first lane. This is the last big card that he has access to in his entire deck. So he is saying, I am going to push this lane down, or I'm going to move into that second lane and buy enough time for that one to win. And it just feels like it'd be better served to try to punk him out of the game by finding a little bit more time in some of the other lanes. But anyway, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun to do this. I learned a lot as always, and keep your eyes peeled about other things that are happening on the channel. Be sure to, of course, like, subscribe, and share to help the channel out. It really does make a huge difference. I mean, I'm a small creator. I'm starting up as a channel, but I really want to do this a lot more. And if you help me grow the channel, I can do it a lot more and get better content for you. Also, keep up with the feedback. I've been really enjoying that. It's actually, I think, been making a difference in the quality of the product, and I want to keep on getting better. Specifically with this one, the actual game itself was kind of long, and the pacing wasn't particularly fast, and so I'm trying to learn how to just cast that well. It was kind of one of the challenges of this one, so I'd be specifically interested in feedback in that area. But that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, everybody.